Hi. Today's reading will be very short. We'll be looking at Al-Umari's passage about a possible expedition across the Atlantic, organized by the predecessor to the famous Mansa Musa of Mali in the 14th century. Let's begin. Ibn Amir Hajib continued, I asked Sultan Musa how the kingdom fell to him, and he said, We belong to a house which hands on the kingship by inheritance. The king who was my predecessor did not believe that it was impossible to discover the furthest limit of the Atlantic Ocean and wished vehemently to do so. So he equipped 200 ships filled with men and the same number equipped with gold, water, and provisions enough to last them for years, and said to the man deputed to lead them, Do not return until you reach the end of it, or your provisions and water give out. They departed, and a long time passed before anyone came back. Then one ship returned, and we asked the captain what news they brought. He said, Yes, O Sultan, we traveled for a long time until there appeared in the open sea, as it were, a river with a powerful current. Mine was the last of those ships. The other ships went on ahead, but when they reached that place, they did not return, and no more was seen of them, and we do not know what became of them. As for me, I went about at once and did not enter that river, but the Sultan disbelieved him. Then that Sultan got ready 2,000 ships, 1,000 for himself and the men whom he took with him, and 1,000 for water and provisions. He left me to deputize for him and embarked on the Atlantic Ocean with his men. That was the last we saw of him and all those who were with him, and so I became king in my own right. This passage right here is the source for all of the Afrocentric theories about pre-Columbian crossings of the Atlantic by Africans. Lately, I've been trying to not be so dismissive of this story, even though it basically constitutes our sole source. It's actually possible that it did happen. Some of the canoes in West Africa were actually very large and capable of carrying, on the Niger River at least, perhaps up to 80 tons. And we know that further south in West Africa, there were people who used the sail and were traveling long distances, like the Mina and the Crew. For instance, the Mina were said to have sailed from the Gold Coast all the way to Angola, or West Central Africa's coast, certainly by the time of the 1600s and 1700s. And we don't know for sure the antiquity of the use of the sail in West Africa, although it appears to have been not used on the Niger River. But it's certainly possible that the Emperor of Mali had access to resources and knowledge that would have facilitated this expedition actually being possible, including the fantastic number of 2,000 ships. So it's actually possible that this did happen. Whether or not they actually, survived and reached the Americas is unknown. It seems very unclear and unlikely for that to have happened. But the actual fact of an expedition or a crossing of the Atlantic some time before Mansa Musa's reign seems plausible, or very likely. And just because we don't know if they actually survived the crossing or encountered any indigenous societies of the Americas, that doesn't mean that the expedition itself couldn't have happened, or the two expeditions, really. And clearly they knew that this could take a long time because they carried enough provisions to last for years, and they even brought gold. So they were assuming that, that would be of use in terms of exchange or trade with whatever they encountered on the other side. I also wonder if perhaps some people in Mali may have heard stories about the Atlantic from North Africans and Europeans and Mediterranean sources that might have piqued their appetite or made them curious about it as well. Stories about the Atlantic as this unknown vast body of water and legendary isles, and stories of people who got lost in the sea. So it's possible that, maybe this actually did happen, and that, through the use of very large canoes and perhaps even, although we have no evidence for it, sails, they may have actually crossed the Atlantic anyway. So it's interesting to think about, although I guess we have no evidence for cultural contacts with the Americas. But interesting nonetheless.